Welcome back to Leadership Unpacked with the Business Book Club, where we break down the toughest challenges leaders face and offer insights from some of the most influential business books out there. I'm Hannah Halley, and today we're diving into the gritty world of making tough decisions. You know, those decisions where the stakes are high, the room is silent, and everyone's looking at you like, what now? It's in those moments that real leadership shines or crumbles. We'll pull lessons from The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz and look at how Howard Schultz made pivotal decisions that brought Starbucks back from the brink. Let's set the scene. We've all been there, facing a decision so daunting that even flipping a coin seems like a stress-free alternative. But what makes these decisions tough? Ben Horowitz sums it up well in The Hard Thing About Hard Things. There are no easy answers, and he's right. Horowitz talks about those moments when the data doesn't give you a clear answer, when your gut says one thing and your team says another. It's these moments that define you as a leader. The good news? There's a way to navigate through this chaos without losing your sanity or your team's trust. All right, let's unpack some of the standout lessons from Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things, because this isn't your run-of-the-mill leadership book. It's not about vision boards or making sure your morning routine involves avocado toast and meditation. No, Horowitz dives into the gritty reality of making decisions when everything seems to be falling apart and there's no clear path forward. One of the first lessons Horowitz drives home is this: be comfortable being uncomfortable. This sounds simple, right? But let's be honest, nobody likes being uncomfortable. It's like those cold showers everyone says are great for you. Sure, they wake you up, but you'd rather be under a warm blanket. In leadership, though, comfort is often the enemy of progress. If you're constantly waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect set of data, you're already behind. Horowitz shares stories from his time as CEO of LoudCloud, a company that he describes as going from hero to zero in the blink of an eye. One of his most difficult decisions came when LoudCloud was hemorrhaging money and facing bankruptcy. The only way to keep the company afloat was to take it public during one of the worst market downturns in tech history. Imagine that, a Hail Mary pass that, if missed, would not only sink the company, but also put everyone's jobs at risk. But Horowitz knew that waiting for a safer bet wasn't an option. It was uncomfortable, risky, and far from ideal, but he made the call. Horowitz emphasizes that, in those moments, indecision is worse than a wrong decision. Why? Because being stuck in analysis paralysis means you're choosing inaction, and inaction rarely moves the needle. Leaders need to accept that not every decision will be the right one, but making a decision and learning from its outcome is what keeps you moving forward. Another key lesson from Horowitz is the importance of maintaining your confidence, even when you don't have all the answers. This doesn't mean faking certainty. Horowitz is clear that people can sense insincerity a mile away. What it means is being transparent about what you know and what you don't, while showing confidence in your team's ability to navigate the unknown. Saying something like, "We don't have all the answers right now, but we're going to figure this out together," can be far more effective than pretending you've got everything under control when you don't. Think of it as being the captain of a ship caught in a storm. Your crew doesn't need you to say, "Don't worry, I know exactly when the storm will end." They need to hear, "We're in rough seas, but I'm here and we're steering through this together." Horowitz also dives into what he calls the struggle, a term for those gut-wrenching periods when everything seems to be going wrong. He writes, "The struggle is where greatness comes from. In these moments, you might feel alone, doubt yourself, and question why you ever signed up for this in the first place." But Horowitz argues that the best leaders don't see the struggle as a sign of failure. Instead, they understand it as an integral part of the journey. And if you're a leader listening right now, nodding along thinking, "Yep, been there," just know you're not alone. Somewhere, Ben Horowitz was probably sitting in his office, looking at spreadsheets that made no sense, sipping cold coffee and thinking, "Why did I think this was a good idea again?" So, how do you navigate these tough decisions when the struggle hits? You start by accepting that there's no perfect plan. You lean into the discomfort, communicate with your team openly, and lead with conviction, even if you're not sure what the next chapter holds. And as we'll see, some of the most successful leaders, like Howard Schultz, turned these principles into actions that brought their companies back from the brink. All right, let's take what we've learned from Ben Horowitz and see how it plays out in the real world with a leader who's had his fair share of tough decisions, Howard Schultz. If you're thinking, yes, the coffee guy, you're spot on. But Schultz's story goes far beyond lattes and cappuccinos. It's a masterclass in making bold, high-stakes decisions when everything is on the line. In the early 2000s, Starbucks was expanding rapidly, too rapidly. Stores were popping up on every corner, but the growth came at a cost. The company's signature quality and customer experience were slipping, and Schultz, who had stepped down as CEO in 2000, watched from the sidelines as his beloved brand started losing its soul. It was like seeing your child go off the rails after years of nurturing them. In 2008, with Starbucks facing financial decline and the global economy heading into a recession, Schultz made the tough decision to return as CEO. Now, imagine stepping back into a company that's teetering on the edge. You're not just playing defense, you need to make the kind of decisions that could either save the business or sink it further. And Schultz didn't come back with the play it safe approach. He started with the bold decision to close stores. One of Schultz's most daring moves was to close over 7,000 US stores for a full day to retrain baristas on how to make the perfect espresso. Yes, you heard that right. Closing thousands of stores and losing millions in revenue for the sake of retraining employees on a skill that many businesses might have written off as good enough. But Schultz knew that Starbucks had to go back to its roots, exceptional coffee and customer experience. Can you imagine the reaction of investors? I bet the boardroom was filled with furrowed brows, questioning whether Howard was sure about this, like, really sure? And Schultz, probably sipping his own perfectly brewed espresso, might have been questioning this himself. But why did this decision matter? Shutting down operations for a day was symbolic and practical. It sent a powerful message. We care more about getting it right than making a quick buck. Schultz understood that making the tough decision to invest in his team's skills and the brand's reputation would pay off in the long run, and it did. That day wasn't just about espresso. It was about hitting the reset button on a company that had lost its way. Think about that for a second. How many leaders would have the courage to halt business and face the criticism that comes with it? Schultz took a calculated risk, knowing that short-term losses were worth the long-term stability and renewed trust in the brand. He was practicing what Horowitz calls leading through the fog, acting decisively even when the outcomes were uncertain. This allowed him to reignite company values. Beyond the coffee, Schultz re-emphasized Starbucks' core mission, to be a third place between home and work. This was more than just a marketing slogan, it was the company's ethos. Schultz understood that in times of crisis, reinforcing the company's mission and values could help guide difficult decisions. He didn't just talk the talk, he took action that aligned with the company's fundamental principles. One of the first things Schultz did was call a leadership meeting in New Orleans. But this wasn't your typical PowerPoint and lectern kind of meeting. Schultz wanted leaders to feel the passion behind Starbucks' mission. He spoke candidly about the mistakes that had been made, the challenges ahead, and why it was essential to reignite the company's commitment to excellence. Picture that scene. Schultz pacing, probably with a cup of espresso in hand, saying, "We didn't get here by accident, and we're not getting out by accident either." I imagine the room filled with people who were half inspired and half genuinely concerned for what that training might entail. This all led to a new era of transparency and action. Schultz also brought transparency to his leadership style. He didn't sugarcoat the challenges, but openly discussed the tough road ahead. Employees and investors alike appreciated his candor. It built trust and created a unified sense of purpose. Schultz knew that making these decisions wouldn't just turn the business around, but would re-establish Starbucks as a brand synonymous with quality and care. So, how does this all tie back to what we learned from Ben Horowitz? It's a perfect example of being comfortable with discomfort and leading through uncertainty. Schultz didn't know for sure that closing the stores would reignite the brand, but he knew that doing nothing or playing it safe would seal Starbucks' fate. He made a tough call that aligned with the company's core values and ultimately turned the business around. If you are fed up of hearing about coffee, let's exploring a different example. Let's switch gears and look at a leader who made tough decisions that reshaped an entire industry, Indra Nooyi, the former CEO of PepsiCo. Nooyi's story is about having the courage to make transformative choices, even when it means facing resistance from all directions. When Nooyi took over as CEO in 2006, PepsiCo was already a global giant, but its reliance on sugary drinks and snacks was becoming a concern, especially with growing awareness around health and wellness. Nooyi made the bold decision to pivot the company's focus towards more nutritious products, introducing what she called performance with purpose. Now, imagine being at the helm of a company where profits from sugary sodas and chips are sky high, and you're the leader who says, "We need to change course before the ship hits the iceberg." That's not an easy sell to shareholders looking at quarterly gains. Nooyi faced pushback not just from investors but even from within the company. But she stuck to her guns, believing that long-term success required aligning the company with changing consumer values. A key decision was to diversify PepsiCo's portfolio. One of Nooyi's most significant and tough decisions was to diversify PepsiCo's product portfolio. She championed the acquisition of healthier brands like Tropicana and Quaker Oats and invested heavily in research and development to create new products with less sugar and better nutritional value. This wasn't just a minor adjustment, it was a multi-billion-dollar strategic shift. I like to think some board members were probably sitting there saying, "Indra, are you telling us we're moving from Mountain Dew to oat milk?" And she probably nodded calmly and said, "Yes, and trust me, it's the future." But why did this decision, mattered Nooyi's decision to prioritize health-conscious products, set PepsiCo apart from its competitors? While profits from traditional snacks and sodas continued to roll in, the company's revenue from healthier products began to grow, accounting for nearly half of the company's total revenue by the time she stepped down in 2018. This foresight not only boosted the company's long-term profitability, but also improved its public image. This wasn't just about dollars and cents, it was about future-proofing a company that could have easily rested on its laurels. Nooyi made a tough decision that many viewed as risky, but she understood that leadership isn't about taking the easy road. It's about making the choices today that will shape the landscape of tomorrow. One of the most compelling aspects of Nooyi's leadership was how she handled the resistance she faced. Instead of shutting down criticism, she engaged with it. She held discussions, laid out her vision transparently, and showed stakeholders why this shift was necessary for long-term success. This approach ties back to Horowitz's lesson about leading with transparency. Nooyi wasn't pretending that everything was simple. She openly acknowledged the challenges, but remained committed to her strategy. Nooyi's journey aligns perfectly with Horowitz's advice. Be willing to make the hard choices that go against the grain, but do it with conviction and transparency. Like Horowitz's lead through the fog principle, Nooyi navigated an uncertain path with clarity and purpose. And, as history has shown, it paid off. We're now going to explore actionable tips you can use to apply these principles in your own leadership, from communicating difficult decisions to standing firm when the pressure is on. We've looked at the real-life stories of Howard Schultz at Starbucks and Indra Nooyi at PepsiCo. Let's break down the strategies they use to navigate those tough decisions and how you can apply these lessons to your own leadership. 1. Don't delay the hard calls. When faced with challenges, both Schultz and Nooyi demonstrated that delaying hard decisions can be more damaging than making a risky choice. Schultz knew that Starbucks' brand was deteriorating and took swift action by shutting down thousands of stores for barista training, even at a significant financial loss. It was a bold, immediate call that sent a powerful message. Quality and consistency come first. Schultz's strategy shows that sometimes the tough decisions are the ones that need to be made yesterday. If he had hesitated, Starbucks could have spiraled further, and the decline might have become irreversible. On the other hand, Indra Nooyi's approach at PepsiCo highlighted that when you see a shifting trend or a risk on the horizon, like the move toward healthier consumer choices, you don't wait for a perfect consensus. Nooyi didn't stall when she saw that consumer preferences were changing. She committed to transforming PepsiCo's product portfolio, even though it meant facing significant resistance from investors and internal stakeholders. So, if you're sitting on a difficult decision and thinking, maybe if I wait a little longer, it'll get easier, spoiler alert, it might not. Schultz and Nooyi show that acting decisively can often be the most empathetic move you make because it helps guide your team through uncertainty. 2. Over-communicate your intentions. Both leaders excelled at over-communication, ensuring that their teams and stakeholders understood the why behind their decisions. Schultz knew that closing thousands of stores would cause confusion and concern. He didn't just announce it and disappear. He communicated openly with employees, partners, and the public about why this was necessary. This built trust, even among skeptics, and reinforced his commitment to Starbucks' core values. I can picture some of the conversations in those stores. Wait, we're closing to learn how to make coffee better, but we already know how to make coffee. And Schultz probably replied, trust me, it's about more than just the coffee. Indra Nooyi used a similar strategy during PepsiCo's transformation. She didn't simply announce that the company was pivoting toward healthier products and expect everyone to nod along. She engaged with stakeholders, had tough conversations, and explained her vision in detail. She balanced transparency with conviction, laying out the facts and potential benefits while also acknowledging the risks. The lesson here? Communication isn't just about saying what's happening, it's about showing that you're confident enough to lead through the uncertainty and empathetic enough to explain it. If your team feels like they're in the dark, fear and doubt will fill that space. Both Schultz and Nooyi ensured that their teams were not only informed, but part of the mission. 3. Align your decisions with core values. A common thread between Schultz and Nooyi's stories is their deep understanding of their company's core values. Schultz's decision to retrain baristas wasn't just about improving coffee, it was about preserving Starbucks' identity as a place of quality and connection. Similarly, Nooyi's pivot at PepsiCo was about more than jumping on the health trend. It was about aligning the company with a sustainable, forward-thinking mission that resonated with the values of the modern consumer. If you're making a tough call, ask yourself, does this align with what we stand for? Schultz knew that Starbucks' DNA was built on quality and experience, not just profit. Nooyi recognized that PepsiCo needed to evolve to stay true to its commitment to innovation and meeting consumer needs. If your decision aligns with your core mission, it's easier to stand by it, even when the going gets tough. So before you make a call that keeps you up at night, think about how it fits with your team's values. Does it honor them, or does it compromise what you're built on? Your team will be more likely to rally behind a decision if they see it as an extension of your shared values. 4. Be prepared for resistance and stand firm. Both leaders knew that making tough decisions meant facing resistance. Schultz had to deal with investors who worried about revenue loss. Nooyi faced board members and shareholders who doubted the wisdom of moving away from lucrative sugary products. But what set them apart was their ability to stay firm in the face of that resistance. They didn't allow criticism to derail their strategies or their confidence. All right, let's bring everything together. We've covered a lot, from Ben Horowitz's lessons on making tough decisions in The Hard Thing About Hard Things to real-life examples from Howard Schultz and Indra Nooyi that showed us what leading through uncertainty truly looks like. So, what can we learn from these stories? Let's recap the main strategies for making tough decisions. 1. Don't delay the hard calls. Schultz's decision to close thousands of Starbucks stores was risky but necessary. Nooyi's choice to pivot PepsiCo towards healthier products was bold and challenged the status quo. The lesson: acting decisively, even when it feels uncomfortable, can save your company from stagnation or decline. 2. Over-communicate your intentions. Both Schultz and Nooyi demonstrated that communicating openly with employees, stakeholders, and even the public is critical when you're making tough decisions. Schultz made sure everyone knew why Starbucks was closing its stores for retraining, framing it as a commitment to quality. Nooyi laid out her vision to investors and employees, ensuring they understood the why behind her strategic pivot. And remember, communication isn't just an information dump. It's about building trust. When people understand your motives, they're more likely to get on board, even if they don't agree with every detail. 3. Align your decisions with core values. Schultz and Nooyi both made decisions that aligned with their company's core missions. Schultz's move reinforced Starbucks' identity as a brand committed to quality and customer experience. Nooyi's strategic pivot was a reflection of her belief in sustainable long-term success over short-term gains. The takeaway: if your decision honors the values that define your team or company, you'll find it easier to stand by that choice, and your team will be more inclined to support you. So, before you make a call that keeps you up at night, think about how it fits with your team's values. Does it honor them, or does it compromise what you're built on? Your team will be more likely to rally behind a decision if they see it as an extension of your shared values. 4. Be prepared for resistance and stand firm. One of the most challenging parts of leadership is sticking to your guns when the pressure is on. Schultz faced criticism for closing thousands of stores, and Nooyi met with resistance from investors and internal stakeholders who were skeptical about shifting PepsiCo's focus. But what set them apart was their ability to stay firm in the face of that resistance. They didn't allow criticism to derail their strategies or their confidence. Schultz and Nooyi didn't get swayed by the naysayers because they knew their why. Nooyi famously said, "Leadership is hard to define, and good leadership even harder. But if you can get people to follow you to the ends of the earth, you are a great leader." And that's what she did. She got PepsiCo to follow her through a challenging but necessary transition. And sure, standing firm might not win you any popularity awards in the short term, but last I checked, the goal was business success and providing sustainable employment. Think about your own experiences. When did you have to stand firm in the face of resistance, and how did it turn out? Were you the Schultz closing the store or the Nooyi pushing for change? Share your stories, and let's learn from each other's tough calls. As we wrap up today's episode, remember, tough decisions are where leadership is defined. Whether you're closing stores to refocus on quality or shifting your company's entire product strategy, the courage to act, communicate, align with values, and stand firm is what sets great leaders apart. If you found today's episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us create the content you want to hear. And let's keep the conversation going. Tag us with #TheBusinessBookClub and share your leadership stories. Join me next time as we delve into building a visionary team with insights from Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek and success stories from innovative companies like Pixar. It's an episode packed with team-building tips that you won't want to miss. Until then, stay bold, stay empathetic, and lead with purpose. Thanks for listening to Leadership Unpacked, where we turn business challenges into leadership wins.